Have a look at this. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Check it out. Check it out. Wow. The power of the ocean. Okay, today's video, blending multiple exposures. So we'll get some waves crashing over the rocks out the back, we'll get some waves crashing over the rocks in the middle, and we'll get some with the water streaking out, and we'll blend all of those exposures together. Waves, rocks, the ocean, the power, love it. Okay, and that's what we're going to do today. We're going to use our wide angle lens. We're going to get in nice and close to some of these rocks. Blue sky day. And we're going to get some nice shots. Okay, we don't have to wait for the golden hour, blue hour. Yes, it helps. It does make the images more dramatic, but there's just something about a nice blue sky day, a perfect day. So I framed up a shot. Look, it's okay. Again, it's we've got water movement out there, we've got water movement here, we've got water movement here. We've got lots of interest, okay? We've got a very boring sky. So it's all about creating foreground interest to distract us from that sky. So I'm shooting at f13. I've got an ND64 filter on, and I'm shooting at half a second to start with. But it's all foreground. It's a very messy foreground, but it's an interesting foreground. So I'm gonna take some shots as waves are crashing out far. As waves are crashing in here, I'm going to take lots of shots. Okay, so a big wave out the back. I'll get that wave as it crashes out the back. So I want that movement over those rocks out there. Like that is perfect. Okay, we'll get it as it comes in here. Okay, that's nice as well. And again, I'm just going to keep firing off. We get all that water rushing over the rocks. So loving the way all the water's rushing off the rocks. Looks really nice. And yeah, blue sky days, don't be afraid. A lot of photographers will tell you not to bother, but I'll let you judge the photos. You have a look and tell me what you think of these photos on a blue sky day with some really interesting foreground and some water movement. Okay, now that I've got all my shots from this spot, I'm going to move. I don't want too many in the one spot. So I'll just go and recompose, see what else I can find. But I do like what's happening here. All right, let's go and find somewhere else and see what we can frame up. Now I'm just going to get water as it runs in, water as it runs out. I'm going to take lots of shots. Got this nice little pool in front here. Okay, midground and background aren't doing much, so we really need to focus on foreground. Okay, it is all about foreground when we're doing shots like this. So I'm just watching the horizon. Always keep your eye on the waves. Never turn your back to the waves. So I'm just going to wait for this to crash over the rocks and get all that movement, okay? All that whitewash, all that interest. Okay, so lots of movement in that shot. Probably too much movement, but let's get that whitewash. And you have a look how different all the images look. And try some without waves as well. Try just a little bit. Sometimes you can have too much whitewash. Sometimes too much whitewash can ruin an image. We want to see all those rocks and the rock pools. Make a nice interesting shot. Now onto the blending side of things, and first thing we need to keep in mind is that all of these shots were taken on a tripod and taken in manual mode. So by working on a tripod, all of our images are going to be easier to align. Okay, so if we have a look at our rocks aren't moving. The only thing that is moving is our water. Okay, so by shooting on a tripod, aligning images isn't an issue. By shooting in manual mode, our lighting or our exposure isn't going to change. Okay, so we're at f13, we're at that 1/2 a second or 1/6 of a second. ISO 100, every shot is going to be exposed exactly the same. Expose for your highlights. So that's something I didn't mention, but what I do is I take a reading, I look at my histogram while the whitewash is there, and then I expose for my highlights. So when I don't have any whitewash, for example, everything may appear a little bit darker. Okay, our histogram isn't quite clipping. So I allow for that whitewash to be the brightest part of my exposure. And I always expose for my highlights in a Seascape. And so I'll cover that in another video, but always expose for your highlights, because then we keep all that texture. Okay, as you can see, our clipping warning's fine. If I bring my exposure down a bit, bring the highlights down, we've got all of this texture in the water. Okay, if we overexpose or blow out our highlights, you're going to lose that texture and it's just going to become a white mess. Okay, so that's just a couple of things to take note of, which brings us on to the blending side. So when it comes time to blend, we want our images to be as similar as we possibly can. Okay, so in other words, what we're going to do is we're going to edit one of our images. We're going to sync those settings to all of them before we even think about blending. So what I'm going to do, first thing I like to do is just change my profile to Adobe Landscape. It's going to boost our color, increase dynamic range a little bit. Now in this image, my horizon isn't straight, so I'm just going to quickly straighten my horizon, and I might even just get rid of a little bit of this sky. I don't need that much sky. Probably should have framed it up correctly while I was out in the field, but you know, the power of editing, we can reframe it. So that's looking a little bit nicer. Another thing I like to do is bring down my highlights a little bit, lift my shadows a little bit. I also bring down my whites and lift my blacks. That's just going to add some more dynamic range, and then we can add contrast in later. Okay, we can lift our whites and our blacks later where we want to lift our blacks and whites. Now the white balance, yeah, it looks pretty good where it is. I might just warm it up a little bit just to get a little bit. It was fairly early morning, so it was around about 9 o'clock in the morning. So there was a little bit of a golden glow, not much. So I just want to bring out that sunshine on these rocks in particular. Tint looks pretty much right. I don't need to change that too much. Now this is the important part. So that's all we're going to do. This is about blending, not so much editing. What we're going to do is just by holding our control or our command key, we can then select our other images. So now that we've got all of those images selected, what we're going to do is press sync, check all, and synchronize. Now if you're doing this directly in Photoshop, very similar process. Basically sync all of your images together. So whatever edit you do to one will then sync across to the others. Okay, so if we have a look at that, the only thing that's changing is our water movement. Our rocks are the same, our sky's the same, everything is very similar. And that's the key to blending images. Get all of your images as close to each other as possible. Okay, nothing worse than trying to blend different exposures, different white balances. Get everything synced up, and it will make the blending process much easier. Now we can't do this in Lightroom, so we have to do it in Photoshop. And with our images selected, what we're going to do is right click, come up to edit in, and in this case we're going to open them as layers in Photoshop. So that will just stack them all together in Photoshop, and then we can start blending them together. Okay, so now we have them all opened into Photoshop, and over here to the right hand side we have all of our layers. Now the way I like to do it is just one layer at a time. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide my top layer, and then I'm going to hide the next layer. So then I'm just looking at one image. And by looking at this image, this is the one where I want all this water in the foreground. Okay, now if I hold the control key or the command key and then press number 0, that will take us to full screen. Okay, so it'll just fit the screen a bit better so we can see what we're doing. Okay, so what I like to do here is, now that we've got all of our layers aligned, we're just going to work one layer at a time. So I uncheck all of my layers to start with, so we can just see our bottom layer. Okay, so as we go up, every time we click this eyeball, we're adding a new photo onto the pile. And that's the easiest way to think of layers. You've got one photo, you start with one photo, the next one goes on top, and then the next one goes on top again. Okay, so you're adding photos to a stack of photos. Okay, so if we undo these eyeballs, we can then see our bottom image. That's the one, that's our main image that we're starting with. And then what we're going to do with our next image, we're just going to blend the water. Okay, I want to keep all of this in our foreground. I just want these waves crashing over the rock. So the way I like to do this is we're going to create a layer mask. But if we just create a normal layer mask, what that does is create a white layer mask. So now we can see everything. If we turn this into a black layer mask, it's basically blacking out that layer so we can see what's underneath. To do that, we can press Control or Command and the letter I, and that will invert the mask. Okay, so now we know that that layer there has the water coming over the rocks. So what I'm going to do, now that I have a black mask, to undo what I've blacked out, I come over to my brush tools. I just toggle between my black and white down here, or you can use X on the keyboard. We'll toggle between black and white. I come up to my opacity. I want that at 100%. I want my flow at 100%, and I want my smoothing at 0. Okay, and then with a brush tool, we can use our square bracket keys, make the brush bigger or smaller. I'm going to make it reasonably big enough to cover these rocks, and then with a white brush, we know that that water flowing over the rocks is over here somewhere. We're just going to paint it in, and just like that we can start to paint in that whitewash that we want. So if we hide that layer, there's our original, and now we've just added in or blended in just the bits that we want. Okay, alternatively, what we can do is if you just create a layer mask, okay, then you can black out the bits you don't want. Okay, so I don't want all that whitewash down here in the foreground, so I'm going to black out the bits that I don't want. Okay, so that's the power of layer masks, is a black brush will black out areas, a white brush will paint them back in. Forget this white reveals, black conceals, because I'm using a black brush to reveal what's underneath. But the way I like to think about it, the black brush will black out the bits we don't want. Okay, so if we grab a black brush and we don't want it down here, so we're going to paint black down here, and then that's blacking out where we don't want that layer. Okay, I kind of like the water up through here as well. I really just want that whitewash coming over the rocks. Okay, and the beauty with layer mask is if we just switch back to our white brush, for example, we can start to paint back in. So we might want more water here. Okay, switch back to black, and then we can undo what we've done. Choose how much of that whitewash you want. Personally, I just want it coming over those rocks because I like what's happening in my foreground. Okay, so then we've gone from that to that. And then we're going to add on another layer. So if we have a look at our top layer, again, now we can't see what's underneath because we've stacked another photo on top. So we have that eyeball and that's stacked another photo on top. So what we want to do now is, again, we want to either black out this bottom part to reveal what's underneath, or we want to paint in just that part. Okay, so either we can create a white mask and then use our black brush to black out all the bits we don't want, or we can invert that mask and black it out completely, switch back to our white brush, and then we know that wave's up here somewhere, and we can just paint in that wave. Okay, and then just come across a little bit further. Okay, so that's the power of layer masks. You can paint in, paint out, whichever parts you want. Takes a little bit of practice to get your head around it, but if you just think of the black blacks out. Okay, so now that we've blended all our layers together, now we can start actually editing the photo. So what I like to do is I just come up to Layer, Flatten Image, okay, and now it's flattened them all into one photo. So now we've got one image that's ready to start, and now we can do our edits. If we want to do some curves, adjustments, or replace the sky, do whatever you like. Okay, so that's it for this video. If you did like it, please give it a thumbs up. Feel free to subscribe. If you subscribe, you'll get to see me live. So subscribe, hit the notification bell, and if I'm going to be going live, you'll get a notification that I'm going live. Jump in, say hello, ask a question. It's all free, and we've got a really nice little community. So come in, say hello. Okay, and that's it for this video. So thank you for watching, and hopefully I will see you again very shortly. Hello and welcome to Seascapes. I just filmed the most epic waves crashing up over these rocks and I forgot to hit the record button. As the tide's coming in, you shouldn't be this close to a rock edge, but because I forgot to hit record, I'm going to stay here a little bit longer because I am an idiot.